Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good Friday so far. Let's see. Perfect. All right. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. Let's see if we can't get some good conversations going today. What's up, Rusik? All right. I'm like 3 minutes early, Lizzie. But I've been having some good conversations even with other TikTok creators. Showed up on AG's live yesterday, and she's extremely respectful. I really appreciated how she was asking questions and just being genuinely curious and not trying to trip people up. All right. Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Are you at least over the age of 18?
Yes, I am.
All right. And what brings you up here today?
Yeah, so I was watching your live the other day with Yoti, however you say his name.
Yeah.
And I heard you say something that I thought was a little interesting. You said that belief in God can be rational.
Yes.
Which kind of implies that at some point it can be irrational.
Yep.
When do you think that point is?
So it's not necessarily like a point, so to speak. It has more to do with how you arrive at a conclusion, and in fact, how you arrive at any conclusion. So, for example, let's say you believe that the Earth is a spheroid because you like round shapes. Well, that's not a rational belief, even though the conclusion is correct.
Well, it wouldn't be rational reasoning. The belief would be rational, but
no, the belief,
right.
The belief would be correct, but the rational wouldn't be. And so it's not, beliefs aren't rational in and of themselves. They are either correct or incorrect, and one is justified or unjustified for having those beliefs, and one is justified in having a belief if the reasons for one holding that belief is rational.
So I'm assuming you've heard of the whole like justified true belief, that kind of stuff.
That is what makes something be knowledge, and what Gettier problems tend to get into is showing how we haven't really that we need to be careful as far as like what we consider to be justification, because just because a belief is true and we think that we have justification for the belief, sometimes it lands on what's called epistemic luck. But yeah, like even as a foundational thing, like justified true belief is good enough, I would say, for 90% of cases on what constitutes as knowledge.
Right, but there are also like unjustified true beliefs as well.
Yeah, that's where you get into, like, say, Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which I would argue, in a
Right.
way, is in and of itself a justification. Um, uh, Leibniz describes two different types of truths. You had contingent truths and necessary truths. And a contingent truth is something that, like, if I was to say, the door is open. Well, the statement itself can be true or false. It just depends on the actual state that the door is in. Versus something like, say, 2 plus 2 equals 4. We can know if that statement is true or false just based on the statement alone. We don't need to look into anything else outside of that. And so there are some knowledge statements that I would say are, we call them self-evident. And that's what these unprovably true things, because they are self-justifying, is the way that I would say it.
Interesting. So, I guess my question is, what was your rationale to come
Mm-hmm.
to the conclusion that God is real?
Yeah, so by God here, especially for the purpose of this conversation, it is the ultimate grounding of all reality. Now, do I hold to a particular understanding of quote unquote attributes of that grounding? Sure. But as far as like the philosophical understanding of the ultimate grounding of all of reality, the argument and the full version of it is listed on my TikTok, but let me do this. So, from
Well,
premise
why
one,
don't you just walk me through?
yeah,
Yeah, just walk me through how you got to the conclusion.
yeah. So the first premise is that something had to always exist, and then premise two is because something had to always exist, there had to be at least one thing that isn't dependent on anything else. Premise three, in order for this thing to be independent, it needs to be self-sufficient for its own existence. Premise four, in order to be self-sufficient for its own existence, it needs to be existence itself, as in its own existence is what it is. Premise four, premise five is there can only be one thing whose existence is itself, because to duplicate it, there would be no differences within it. This violates the transitive property. Therefore, there can only be one independent thing whose identity is its own existence, and that's what I call God.
To me, it sounds like you've just described the universe.
So the difference between what I just described and the universe itself, you and I are a part of the universe. So the thing whose identity is its own existence has no parts. It just is existence. It would be kind of the equivalent would be basically say, hey, I'm talking about red. And you say, well, it sounds like you just described apples and stop signs and everything that has red. No, no, no. I'm talking about red in and of itself.
Yeah, I'm also talking about the universe in and
Which,
of itself.
but so you can talk about an apple in and of itself. You can talk about, but the apple also has a skin, juices, the meat of the apple, the core, the stem, and like the whole or in and of itself can still have parts. The universe is comprised of you, me, stars, atoms, all of these different things. And so it is the set, so to speak, of all things that exist in space-time. What I'm talking about, though, is more foundational than even that.
What's more you think God is more foundational than the universe?
That is the philosophical understanding and definition of God. It is the ultimate foundation or ultimate grounding of all of reality.
That
And
just sounds like the universe to me.
I mean, at that point, you're describing Spinoza's God.
Well, you do realize that Spinoza's God wasn't actually a god, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying is like Spinoza did believe that he was what's called a pantheist. Like he believed it was divine and foundational. But the question and the conversation is almost everyone agrees that there is or needs to be some independent thing. The disagreement is on the identity of this independent thing. And the universe itself is not existence in and of itself because the universe is space-time.
Sure. What is existence? What are you defining that as?
The act of being. The act of
so being. So existence is an action?
Yeah. Like, you and I are existing. You and I have being. You and I are a being. The chair I'm sitting on is a being.
The so universe... you said something about existence is... What did you say? Yeah, you kind of you were labeling existence before as not an action.
No, not a predicate.
Right. Well, you didn't even say that it was an action earlier. Now it's an action?
Well, no, so the thing is that that in the philosophical tradition I come from, that is what existence is. It is the state of being. It is an action. Like if I am standing, I am, and if I never change and take no new action, I am still doing the act of standing. So existence is an action in that sense. The predicate that I was talking about is the idea of like if I was to divide and talk about everything that makes me be what I am, then if existence is a predicate, I should be able to find, as Godey was saying, that packet of information that is existence. But because existence isn't a predicate, I'm not going to find that packet of information, so to speak.
I'm not really sure about these packets of information. I don't even know really what that is, but
well, so it's the equivalent of like, hey, I have hair. That's a quote unquote packet of information. So
existence is a property?
No, property and predicates are the same thing. So the way that from what I've been looking into it is the understanding, current understanding on like the quote unquote nature of existence is it's the precondition. So it's not a predicate, but it's the precondition for things to be able to exist.
The precondition is an action?
As in like when we exist, we are doing the act of existing. But in order for us to exist, there needs to be the precondition of existing and existence itself. Right. And that precondition...
That's what I'm asking. So right. If you're saying that existence is an action and it's also the precondition, I'm just asking, the precondition is an action?
So, there's two different, like it's being talked about in two different ways here. Just like I can talk about...
Are you equivocating existence?
No, that I'm trying to avoid that. And the confusion seems to come from
Interesting.
So like you and I, we have the act of existing. But existence, separate from the act, is the precondition. It's kind of like how you can talk about the verb running and the noun to describe that. So
what is the noun for this?
Running. So the verb is actually like to run, but the noun of running is the gerund, running.
So the noun is also an action?
No, that's what I'm saying is the noun of running is not an action. Because
running is not an action?
in the grammatical structure, and when we're talking about the idea of running, it is not describing the action or someone doing the action.
What is it describing?
So it's describing that idea, that concept, because remember, nouns are persons, places, things, or ideas. But the
Right.
verb
So
is
running. Running is an idea.
no. So you have the verb.
Well, you're saying that running is a noun.
I'm saying
so. I'm
no,
trying
no,
to parse out.
I'm
How
saying
it
that
is
there
one.
I'm saying that there are two ways to express the term run. The first way is as an action, and the second
To
way is as
run.
an yep, and the second way is
Running.
as a
Right.
so between
Those
those
sound
two.
both like actions to me.
But in the second one, we're talking about the idea or the concept.
What is the concept of running describing?
It is describing an act, but it in and of itself is not an
Interesting.
action.
So can you
It's
please tell me really quickly, what is running in and of itself?
running. So that running in and of itself is a concept we
Uh-huh.
use to describe the act. Existence in and of itself is
Wait, hold on. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to be rude, I promise. I'm just trying to understand how the word running is a noun, because the idea of running is not it's not like an abstract concept. It is describing a physical action. So I'm just confused how running is a noun when it's not describing an idea, it is describing an action.
so the definition of a gerund. A gerund is a verb form ending in ing that functions as a noun in a sentence. Because it acts as a noun, a gerund can be the subject of a sentence, a direct object, or the object of a proposition. While gerunds look exactly like verbs
and
and
running is a gerund.
yes,
Okay.
and that's what I said. And that's what I said earlier. While gerunds look exactly like verbs and represent an action or state of being, they are used as concepts or things. Because they are derived from verbs, they also retain some verb-like qualities, such as taking a direct object or being modified by adverbs. However, they act as
Okay,
a
I'm just
noun
trying to
and
be clear.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I was just confused. No, no worries. I was just trying to be clear. Okay, so and how I'm just not really quite sure how I've heard an argument here that sounds a lot like the universe. You're saying no, it is not the universe because
I'm saying that
of
the
I don't know.
argument that I use does not arrive at the universe as being this independent thing. Are there other arguments out there that arrive at
Can
the
it?
universe as that independent thing? Yes. But that's
Can
not
it
the
though?
can the I don't think it can, but there's people who make
Your
arguments.
your argument cannot also apply to the universe?
No, because
Because
the
it kind of
universe.
really sounds like it does.
I mean, the only way it would is if you hold to priority monism, but that would mean that your cells don't exist. Like, your cells cannot exist without you. Like, that doesn't seem to make
Well,
sense
my
to me.
cells are me.
Well, but
I
here's the thing
am
is that
those cells.
but here's the thing, your atoms pre-exist you. But if priority monism is true, then that would mean that your atoms can't exist until you exist.
Well, I don't think that. I think the
And
atoms,
I
sure,
d-
they can all
and
exist,
I don't
but
th- I
atoms
don't
and cells are not the same.
well, I don't think
Like I,
that
uh,
So I don't think that the atoms can't exist until I exist. I agree with that. That's why I don't agree with
right.
priority monism. I need to do more research
I don't
into
even
it,
know what
though.
that means, honestly.
Well,
What is
um,
priority monism?
where instead of the whole being dependent on the parts, which is the position I hold, priority monism says that the parts are dependent on the whole. The only way for the universe to be this independent thing that I'm talking about is if priority monism is true.
Okay, so I'm sorry, it was like the same thing but opposite, and I forgot which one was which. So you said that priority monism is when the
The
whole
part,
is
the
dependent, or the
no, the
parts are
parts
dependent.
are dependent on the
Gotcha,
whole.
gotcha. Okay, gotcha. So the parts are dependent on the whole. You believe the opposite. The whole is dependent on the parts.
Yep.
That would describe the universe.
No, because if the universe is the set of all things that exist, that means that the whole of the universe is dependent on you, me, the atom, space time, and
Yeah, the
all of these
whole is
different parts.
dependent on the parts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
because
what
the
you
whole,
believe.
yep. But what I'm arguing and what I argued for is a singular part that is independent of anything else and therefore has no parts that make it, and is so because of that it can't be the universe because the universe is dependent on the parts, which is us.
Okay. No, I'm starting to kind of understand here. So if the whole is dependent on the parts, how can one of these parts be separate from all of this?
So the part in question is existence itself. Because what you're doing when you're thinking of parts is you're making it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, so to speak. Um, but let me ask you this. One aspect or one attribute of an apple is it being red, correct?
Wait, no, I'm sorry. I would actually like an answer.
I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it. One aspect of an apple is it being red, correct?
An aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Are you using the word aspect and part interchangeably here?
Kind of, yes.
Kind of.
So, well, the thing is that because, like, what I'm trying to avoid is when I say part, I do mean aspect, but it sounds like you might be thinking of part like, hey, I have a 1 foot ruler, I break it in half, and now I have two 6-inch
No,
rulers.
I'm just trying to be linguistically clear. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to pull one over on you, I promise.
I'm trying to make sure
aspect
that
and
you and I,
part.
yeah, I'm trying to make sure you and I are on the same page because it sounded like
Totally.
you were thinking that parts meant that it gets smaller than the whole.
No.
When that's
No.
not
No,
necessarily
no.
the case.
Right, exactly. I don't think
Okay.
that. I'm just
Okay.
trying to be clear that by aspect you mean part.
Yes.
So we can use those interchangeably. Okay,
Yes.
great. So one part of an apple's whole is redness. Yeah.
Yep. But
Okay.
what size is red? It doesn't have
Well,
one,
if it
right?
doesn't depend on how small or how large the parts are, then that wouldn't matter either way.
Exactly. So you were talking about you had brought in size. I think you had talked about how can
No,
the
I did
whole.
not bring up size.
Well, you had talked about like the whole. Like how can it be that we get all of these different things from this one small part?
No. I can re-ask the question. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question was, if you believe that the whole is dependent on all of the parts, why is there one part just floating around, so to speak? What is that about?
So it's not necessarily that it's like floating around or anything, but like what it's getting to is what
Well,
is
it's
the most
independent.
what is the most foundational thing that cannot be further subdivided? Um,
So just
and
one
that
of these parts manages to be that thing?
it would have to be. And that independent thing would be existence because like to use your example, what is you asked what is this most independent thing that would just be floating around? Well, right there you described the fabric of space-time. So now if this thing is floating around it's dependent on space in order for it to be able to float. But
Well,
what
I'm
I'm
using
talking
float in a very not literal way here,
Yeah.
but you're saying that the whole depends on the parts, okay? And then we have one part here, one aspect that is
Mhm.
entirely independent of the whole
Everything
and
else.
these other parts.
Yep.
But if the whole is dependent on the parts, it would also be dependent on this part that has to be included with everything else, right?
So, well, no, that's what I'm saying. This is like, let me ask you this: if something,
Can I have an
like,
answer for that?
well, yeah, that's what I'm getting at is, if something is singular, it only has one part, so its one part is equal to the whole.
Right, but the whole is dependent on that part along with all the other parts. How is this part just
There
like
is
independent?
there is no other parts.
So
Like,
wait, hold on. So the whole that you believe in that is dependent on parts, there's only one part that the whole is
no, no, no,
dependent
no,
on?
no. You and I are a whole that has parts. This chair that I'm
Right,
on is
and
a
in your
whole that has
yeah, yeah,
parts.
yeah. And to analogize here, one of these parts that the chair is comprised of that is dependent on all of these parts to be the whole. One of these parts somehow is not included in these parts that the whole is dependent on.
No, so what I'm getting at
That's what
is
you said.
no, no, no. Like,
Yeah,
so if
that is what you said. You said the whole is dependent on the part, but then we
mhm.
have this independent part that is not at all related to any of this.
No, 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 no. So I am dependent on my parents in order for me to exist. Does that mean that my parents are dependent on me to exist? No.
No, I understand the whole. I understand the whole thing
So,
about the whole being
right.
dependent on the parts, right? But if there is one part that is independent from this,
No,
how
it's
is it a
not
whole?
that's
If
no,
that
that's what I'm saying. It's not independent from this. What I'm saying is
I could have
that
sworn that's what you said. I'm
no,
sorry.
it's independent from anything prior, and everything else is dependent on it. So it's
I'm
in
confused.
this relationship. So going back to, like I was saying, like, I have myself and I am dependent on my parents, but my parents are not dependent on me. They would exist whether I did or not.
Okay, and
So if we keep breaking it down, we eventually get to this foundational thing that everything else is dependent on, but it itself is not dependent on anything prior to it. So even though
well,
there
as
are
far as
other,
I understand, none of these parts are dependent on anything. The whole is dependent on all of these parts. Yeah.
so the whole, no, no, so you have the whole. I am
Is
a
that
whole.
correct?
I am a whole. My parents are a separate whole. I am dependent on my
Sorry, it's
yeah, I am dependent on my parents.
right. Let's make it more simple. Let's make it like so
Mhm.
much more simple than even this. Okay. So
Okay.
I understood you when you said that you believe that the whole is dependent on the parts, not the other way around, correct?
Eh, yes, and that is why it can't be
Okay.
the
No, that's great.
universe.
Yeah. So, one second, 1 second. So the whole is dependent on the parts, right? I
Hmm.
don't know how many parts there are here. You're claiming there's only one, apparently, but the
No,
parts
no, no,
are
no,
not
no.
dependent on
Pause,
anything.
pause, pause.
Yeah, yeah.
There are different types of holes, and there are many different holes that have different parts. I am saying eventually, when we start asking about what is more and more foundational, we get to different holes with different parts, different holes with different parts, different holes, until eventually we get to
Okay.
until we get to a hole that has two parts, but one of those parts is
Wow,
dependent
that's
on the
new.
other, and that
Okay.
part
So which
that
is God the whole or the part?
God is the part that by itself is a whole.
And if we have another part that is by itself a whole, what then?
And that's what I was getting at with the final premise was, if something is by the law of identity and the transitive property, if something is completely identical and there is no difference in any aspect of it, and because this thing only has one part, and there's nothing that we can add on to it to differentiate it from the other, by the law of the transitive property, they're not two things, but actually one and the same thing. I've got the full...
Can you describe to me this law of transcendent property?
Transitive property.
I'm not like a philosophy person, so I just don't know some of these terms.
This is in math as well. It's the A equals B, B equals C, A equals C.
Okay. That sounds like, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that the law of identity, or am I stupid?
No, the law of identity is A equals A.
Okay, and so this one is A equals B, B equals C, A equals C.
Because if A and B are the same, and B and C are the same, then that means that A and C are the same. And so...
this is the law of transitive
property.
Transitive. Gotcha.
Yep.
So not transcendent, transitive.
Correct.
Okay. So... you believe that within this whole that is dependent on parts, one of these parts is also a whole with a single part that is God?
That seems as close as I think that's as close as we've been able to get so far, yes.
Okay, so now this is kind of an unrelated but still a relevant question. This is the reasoning that led you to believe that God was real?
Yes. Now the thing is that
when did you start believing in God?
So the thing, as you said though, you aren't familiar with the philosophy.
Hold on, one second. Wait. Get out of the philosophy brain for a second, just for a second, I promise, okay? So when did you start believing in God?
When did you start believing in evolution?
I guarantee you. Please.
No. The point that
being super genuine right now.
No, the point that I'm getting at is asking when someone believed something is irrelevant.
Yeah, I told you that this was unrelated and a little irrelevant. So I could have. No, I probably misspoke. I just want to know, when you started believing in God. This is just a conversational, personal question.
I mean, that's fine. I was a cradle Catholic, but the thing is that
One second. So you've always believed in God?
Yeah.
And you used this reasoning to come to the conclusion that God is real when?
About when I was 18 years old, I decided, you know what, let me see if I can't actually show or come to understand that God actually exists, because I want to believe true things. And so I sat down and I was like, all right, where did I come from? Well, I came from my parents. And just started working through and trying to understand the ontology of it and going through the philosophy of it. And I came to an argument that was a weaker version of what I just presented to you. But then in my studies about 2-3 years later, I came across Thomas Aquinas' work called On Being in Essence, and he had a much stronger version of that. And what I presented to you is basically that argument, but using the modern vernacular within the philosophical language.
Okay, so you've basically zhuzhed up an ancient argument.
I mean, we still use ancient mathematics, algebra, or a lot of the mathematics.
I'm literally just trying to talk to you. Don't worry, it's not that serious. I'm just trying to talk to you. So that's basically what you did, right?
I mean, unless you want to use that same terminology to talk about someone who discovered how 2 + 2 = 4 works, sure.
No, I'm literally just I'm having a conversation with you as a person right now. I'm just wondering. That's what you did. You zhuzhed up an old argument, basically.
I wouldn't use zhuzhed up an old argument. I came
Well, I mean, you said that it's Thomas Aquinas's, and you use modern vernacular, so you're zhuzhing up an old argument, yeah?
Well, no, the argument
It's not a
that
trick question, I promise.
the argument that I used was one of my own creation, and I found out that it was very similar to one that Thomas Aquinas used. Like,
okay, so
there's a friend
that's
of mine.
Fine. I'm just trying to talk to you, man. Don't worry about it. It's not a trick, I promise.
No, I understand that, Veggies, but the point that I'm getting at is the question here is on whether or not belief in God is rational. Not, hey, what is Catholic Thinker's life story?
No, I get that. That's why I told you I was pretty clear when I warned you that we're gonna get off the rails for just a second here. And it's okay, we can get back on the train. That's no problem. You are a person. I'm interested, and that's fine. If you don't want to
if you want to learn more about me and like interact with me as a person, I do have a Discord. I try to keep these lives where it's based directly on the prompt because I definitely have other guests waiting. So
no, for sure. You talked to that guy for like a really long time though, but that's fine. So I'm just trying to get this like very basic like understanding of how you came to this conclusion because I think it is actually a little relevant here. So now, okay, I've heard your argument. I don't think that it's really that powerful at all. I think that you could just replace the universe here with God and that would be totally fine. So I guess my next question for you would be, is your God the one you believe in, which you're a Catholic, right? So the basic God, Jesus, whatever. So is this God does this God exist in the universe?
No.
Where does he exist?
So he is not in the universe because the universe is space-time. The way that I would describe it is you have a triangle, and the triangle exists on the Euclidean plane. God is that Euclidean plane.
So God exists in a concept of math?
No, that's an analogy. We are the triangle.
I'm asking you where he actually exists.
Because God does not exist in space-time, asking where he exists is like asking what's north of the North Pole. It's a category error.
Oh, interesting. So it sounds to me like this God that you're describing a God who has the same properties of nothing.
No, because nothing can't exist, period. Not even as a concept.
What's north of the North Pole?
North of the North Pole is a contradiction. So what you would need to do is show how the existence that is its own existence.
Wait, hold on. So if you're saying, like, if you're analogizing God's existence to something existing north of the North Pole, that would be a contradiction.
No, I did not. I said asking where God exists is like asking what's north of the North Pole. Okay, the analogy I use.
Mathematical concept.
No. That's the analogy. Then why would you
bring up triangles?
Because the analogy is that the triangle is the existing thing. But it exists because of the Euclidean plane. God is what enables other things to exist.
Well, that's a claim. For sure. So in the analogy of the Euclidean plane and the triangle, what is the Euclidean plane? Like, how can you, show me what this is, not as an analogy, but as a reality? Like, what is the Euclidean plane?
You remember when I said that? The triangle is the universe. You remember when I said that existence is the
Euclidean plane?
When I said that existence is the prerequisite for everything to exist, the Euclidean plane is the prerequisite for the triangle to exist.
This kind of seems a little circular, like existence is needed for existence. Okay.
I mean, that's where you get into the Gödel's incompleteness theorem. That's when you get into the axioms. Like, if I tried to prove the law of identity, it becomes almost circular, but it's self-evident. It just is. I can't prove the law of identity, because if I tried to prove the law of identity, I have to invoke the law of identity.
But you see how I can just very easily say, like, the universe also, like, this applies to the universe as well. It just is.
I mean, that's fine. That's where the argument currently is, and there are people who make that.
God I'm not here. The universe.
Well, I'm not here to argue or prove that God exists. I'm just here showing that belief in a God is rational, and one can use logic and reason to arrive at the conclusion. You're like, well, that sounds like the universe. I gave you explanations as to why it's not.
I mean, it just seems to me that the rationale is a little circular here.
So, you say that existence does not exist?
No, I'm saying that the reasoning here just sounds like the end here is like existence is needed for existence, which sounds a little circular. So is that rational?
Are you saying that existence is not needed for existence?
No, that's what. Look.
Well, if
listen,
you say, if you're saying, veggies,
when you
if you're
say
saying
that existence is needed for existence, that sounds circular.
So
is it not? Am I crazy?
If it's not circular, or if it is circular, then that means that existence is not needed for existence. So is that the position you want to take?
Well, I'm not even so sure, like, that's what, like, existence is existence. Okay, great. There is something needed for existence, right?
Existence is what enables other things to exist, is the point. That's what the prerequisite is. You can't have things existing unless there is a prerequisite for things to exist.
So is God equal to existence?
Yes, that's the whole thing that I've been saying.
Okay, so the universe is also equal to existence. So,
well,
okay, great. We can believe that it's God or it's the universe, and there's nothing irrational about thinking it's the universe, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine. I never said it was irrational to think it was the universe. I just said I don't think it is.
I'm not saying that you did. I'm not saying that you did. I'm just literally trying to clarify this. Okay, so if this reasoning can lead you to both God and the universe, I mean, how are you defining God again?
Existence, that whose identity is its own existence.
That whose identity is its own existence. Okay. Yep. Is my identity my own existence?
Nope. Your identity is a physical arrangement of matter, cells, and with space-time coordinates. So you have different parts and attributes that are brought into existence, but your identity is not your own existence.
So, okay, if I would disagree with that. I cannot have an identity if I do not exist, correct?
Well, that goes into that Spider-Man analogy I was talking about yesterday.
Is that correct?
Spider-Man
Can I have
has
an identity with that? Wait, hold on. I'm asking you a question. I'm not asking about Spider-Man right now.
I am answering. Spider-Man has an identity.
Can I finish the question?
Sure.
Great. Can I have an identity if I don't exist?
Yes, because Spider-Man doesn't exist, yet has an identity.
But you just said my identity was physical properties.
Yes, and Spider-Man has physical properties as well, but they are not actualized as such.
So Spider-Man's identity is not his existence?
That's what it means for existence to not be a property. If existence is a property or a predicate,
I didn't ask about that.
I'm answering because it's related. If existence is a predicate or a property, then it is part of the identity. But if it's not part of the identity, then it's not. Then it's not a predicate.
I'm sorry. You're gonna have to repeat that.
So if
it was a little bit convoluted. Try again.
If existence is part of an identity, then that means it's a predicate. That means then.
No, you're saying no. You said that like existent, like God is the what was it again? The identity is existence itself.
God's identity is its own existence.
Yeah. So
you then ask, is that the case?
Identity isn't my existence. Like the reason my identity is dependent on my existence.
But that's what I'm saying is.
So I'm also God?
If your identity is dependent on existing, then that means one of two things. You're dependent, so therefore you can't be an independent thing, which is required to be God. Or two, your existence is not a part of your identity. Or three.
Did you not just say that God equals his identity is his own existence?
Yes, but we are not God, so we don't have that identity.
Okay, yeah, this is what's a little bit convoluted here. If I don't exist, where is my identity?
Your identity would be conceptual at that point.
Sounds a lot like God.
I mean, that's your position. Like I said, I'm not up here trying to prove God exists.
So you're saying basically that it is rational to believe in the concept of God.
Sure, if that's what you want to walk away with that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. If you want to believe in concepts of things, that's like, there's no problem there. But you are kind of admitting that this is indeed a concept.
I mean...
Which is fine.
I didn't say that. That's the conclusion you want to walk away with.
Well, that's what I'm getting from all of this, is you're saying that it is rational to believe in God, which is essentially a concept. Okay.
I did not say that second part.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Do you think God actually exists?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so if they actually exist, is that still just a concept?
Yes. Is it just a concept? No. Wait. So if a rock actually exists, could be a concept?
Yes,
because I can have a concept of a rock and the rock actually exists.
Right, so you have a concept of God. Where is God? Where does he actually exist? Because thing about the rock is we can... Wait, hold on one second. The thing about the rock is we can conceptualize the rock, right, in many different ways. Its weight, its shape, its composition, its whatever. We could put googly eyes on it, right, in the concept. But then we also actually have rocks in order to create these concepts about them. So if it was the case that we only had concepts of rocks and there were no actual rocks, this is kind of what it sounds like here, because you are pointing to me to a concept.
Do you know
of
the
God.
difference between
hold on, I wasn't finished. You have pointed me towards a concept of God, but now I want to, as we talked about rocks, now I want to know where the actual God is here.
So one, remember how I said that God is outside of space-time, so to ask where is a category error. And then two...
You just admitted that you think that God actually exists in the same way that we know rocks actually exist.
I don't think that you need space-time coordinates in order to actually exist. Two, you also need to understand...
That's fine, but can I... Yeah, but that's fine. So we have the concept of God. I will grant you the concept of God. That's
I was
fine.
still talking,
now
and
when I asked you...
Veggies, I have allowed you to talk whenever you've asked, but you have constantly interrupted me whenever I was still talking.
There might be a delay. I apologize for that.
The second thing is that if something is sound, then that means that we know that the conclusion to be true, even if we haven't experienced it.
Oh, no. Your argument might be valid, but the soundness of your argument is what I'm contesting now.
So and that's fine. I'm not here to show the soundness of it. I'm here just to show the validity of it.
I see.
I'm just here to show the validity of it.
Right. No, that's fine. But we went past that. I granted you the validity here. Okay. The concept of God, great, is rational, wonderful. Now I'm talking about, I asked you very specifically, do you think God actually exists? And you said yes. So now we have to dive into the...
No, we don't, because that is beyond the scope of this topic.
Oh, I see. So, okay, no, that's totally fine. So right now we have a valid argument for the concept. Okay, great. And your assertion is that it is also sound here. So we're going to have to just come back to that another time then, I guess.
I mean, that's what I'm working on, is making it a sound argument, but I do believe it is sound. And it's just showing the justifications for that. Because like I said, if priority monism is true, then my argument doesn't work. So I need to show that priority monism isn't true, as an example.
No, that's totally fair, I am granting that your argument for the concept, to believe in the concept of God, is rational at this point. Now, the soundness for now is just an assertion. So we're going to have to just come back to the soundness of the argument another time, yeah?
Sure.
Okay, great. Not a problem.
All right. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. We got quite a few guests. I'm going to try to see if we can't get to everyone. Let's see. Hello. Can you hear me?
Sorry. I can hear you, yeah.
All right. What brings you up here again?
Yeah, no, totally. Well, I'm an orbiter. I had some questions. I'm not going to bring up regress this time, I promise. Yesterday we were talking about, it comes up a lot, but good in relation to simplicity. And I'm kind of just I am curious how you relate good to God. I think I've heard you say that it's you consider it kind of a category error to say God is good, because that would make that because of simplicity.
Or an equivocation, but yes.
Yeah. And I think I agree. I think the people who hold to divine simplicity and also say God is good, there are some absolutely brutal bullet bites in there. So I'm kind of glad that that's not the case. But I'm just what's your accounting for good, I suppose, given your view of simplicity?
So the accounting for good that I have is, it's very similar to the virtue ethics type situation, but the idea is that being in line with reality and being consistent with reality, essentially. So effectively, if for example, if it's part of it being if a tree has a particular nature and a particular orientation towards its treehood, then it taking those actions is good for it. Now, I'm not saying that a tree growing is moral or us cutting down a tree is immoral, but let's say the part of the growth of the tree is to build a forest, right? Us removing one tree from a forest is not going to destroy the ends of the forest, but us going and destroying 60% of the trees in the forest does destroy that end. And so at that point, that's when you start getting into us destroying or interfering with those ends being immoral.
Okay. I'm curious, do you have an opinion or a thought on sort of what that nature is grounded in? Like, how do we know what it is, I guess, epistemically, and also metaphysically, like, where does it come from in your view? Because I would imagine it would be something, I mean, it can't be something independent per your worldview, so it has to be dependent on something.
As in, like, is it, when you say independent, like when I'm talking about like the order or structure of the tree, it needs to be something independent of the tree?
No, like, the way that you use independence or dependence in your argument, goodness would have to be dependent on something, because if it was independent, it would be God, which we've said we don't do.
Yeah. Well, no. Like, you can have different independent, like, you can have, in a sense, something getting its independency from, like, or, like, something getting its necessity from something else. But as far as, like, goodness being independent or dependent, what goodness is almost kind of like logic. It's almost like a descriptor, but it's describing a thing's ontology, and if it gets a different ontology from it. So, like, if I achieve my purpose, my goal, that's a good, and because the good is describing a thing that has ontology, that's what we mean by when we say good exists. And the reason why we say evil doesn't exist is all it's describing is me not arriving at that ontology.
I definitely understand. I do think, like, and it might just be the case that this is metaphysically complicated and there isn't an answer, but, like, what good, like, where good comes from, what good is grounded in, what that ontology is.
Yeah. I would say that
to be. I'm not sure if that's clear where that comes from.
Yeah, I would say that good, like, so like, for example, Ian grounds goodness in agency. I would ground goodness in being itself, in reality itself. So the reason why it's wrong to take the life of another individual is because now I am removing their ontology and their end from them completely. Versus, someone struggling and I give them charity. Now I'm helping them achieve their end, helping them achieve their ontology. So rather than it being like, oh, your foot, is used for walking, so now you're doing a grave moral evil by using your foot to write. Well, no, because using your foot to write something isn't hindering or removing the ontology or its ability to walk. But me being like, you know what? I don't feel like having a right foot today and cutting it off. Now I'm removing that ontology and removing that from me. That's when it becomes immoral. So it has less to do with whether or not you're using something for its end, but whether you are helping its end or impeding its end. And there are things that are morally neutral where they don't do anything to those ends.
Okay. I can vibe with the pragmatism in some of that. I want to go back up one layer, though, I think. So when you say that, like, you ground goodness or morality in reality, are you using reality differently from, like, is this separate from existence, or is this would you say that they could be used the same way?
For a non-believer, they can be used the same way. For someone like me, it's a little bit different because reality to me is a thing that has existence. But I know a lot of people equate reality with existence, meaning things that exist. But basically, and this is part of the reason why, like, in classical theism, we say it's proper to say that God is good, because if the measure of goodness is how things that exist achieve their ontological end, then God, as the ultimate ontological end, is good, but he doesn't have it as a property or an attribute or anything like that. It's just us recognizing God as the ultimate end of reality.
So, like, if we were to kind of make a very, very high-level phylogeny of grounding, like, you have God brackets existence as the ground of reality, which is then the ground of morality.
Goodness,
right?
Yeah.
Or goodness, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I think that brings up some odd, like, I am gonna go Euthyphro with it a little bit, because like, in order to ground the reality that grounds the goodness, presumably, like, goodness is something that, like, there are features that would be good and features that wouldn't be good. You could feasibly ground a reality that is not good, I suppose. In which case, are you like, does God? It sounds like you're taking the God knows morality horn as opposed to the God is God is goodness versus Sorry, wait. God knows goodness versus God is goodness. Yeah.
Yep. It's kind of a little bit of both. The issue with divine command theory is that it's arbitrary. But if we removed divine command, or if we removed that arbitrariness from divine command theory, then you get something that's very similar to natural law theory. So I don't know if you've heard some of my conversations with, it wasn't with Russell, but it was with someone else who was running the tag and presupposition arguments. I agree ultimately with the conclusion that morality and goodness and knowledge and logic and reason are grounded in God. What I disagree with is that one needs to know God in order for the worldview to be coherent and in order to have access to these things.
Yeah.
But...
No, that's fine. I also agree that divine command theory is arbitrary.
Yeah, so that's the issue with divine command theory. Natural law theory still acknowledges God as the grounding of it, but because it's not arbitrary, we can use our reason to come to understand it. And just like how we can use logic, even though it's ultimately grounded in God, it's... what's the term? When we're talking about, like, the proximate cause. It's, like, quote-unquote proximate cause is difference. The proximate cause of goodness is the ontological end of things existing.
Yeah, so there is definitely something that is that goodness is derived from, like, it's non-arbitrary. It's real.
Yeah.
There was a path I was walking down, trying to recall my steps. It seems to me that if you want to say that reality has some real features that ground goodness, and you want those real features to, like, not be arbitrary, it seems like there would have to be something about God that is also good to do the grounding, right? Because otherwise God could have made reality anyway, and then that would have resulted in any sort of morality.
The disagreement that I have with that chain of logic is that would then seem to imply that in order for us to have grounding in God, that would mean that God would need to have space, time, matter, and whatever makes us be us, grounded or present in Him. But I don't think anyone really sees an issue with that for divine simplicity, and is actually part of...
it's slightly different because, like, people, we're not, like, grounded in reality as a whole. We are grounded in, like, stuff in reality.
Mm-hmm.
I assume, and goodness, it doesn't sound like is grounded in stuff in reality. It's grounded in reality itself.
Well, no, that's what. Sorry, allow me to be a little bit more clear then. So morality is a system that we invent and or create to try to understand the goodness that is in things. So the goodness. So you have a cat and a mouse. What's good for the cat is not necessarily good for the mouse, and what's good for the mouse is not necessarily good for the cat. And from there, those interactions can cause conflict from time to time. But ultimately, what a moral system is it's trying to take the good that is grounded in each individual thing to determine the best path forward.
Yeah. I think I'm still not quite clear on the grounding relation and how we make it non-arbitrary if it is grounded in reality.
Well, that if it's arbitrary and grounded in reality, then that would mean that reality is arbitrary. But I guess one could
could God have made reality a different way?
So at that point, then that gets into are the rules of chess arbitrary? In one sense, they are, but there's still a system and reason behind them. And
I would, yeah.
So I guess it would just
arbitrarity. I guess.
Yeah, that's where the question is. If you want to say that reality and therefore morality is arbitrary, because God could have made it differently, maybe. There's still things that would have been inherently contradictory to his nature as well as to the means for things to exist. But for example, if all he had created were the angels, well, murder would not be moral or immoral because it couldn't exist. An angel and a demon can't take the life of each other.
Yeah.
So maybe in that sense, one could say it's arbitrary, but it still would not have. It still would have reasons behind it that we can come to understand. And
yeah, like God's nature would be a reason that things would be one way over another way.
Yeah, and the thing with what's the term I'm looking for? One could say, well, the reason why murder is immoral is because God decided to make things with physicality that have mortality. And from there, because God arbitrarily decided that, one might be able to say that now murder is arbitrarily immoral. But that just seems to run counter to how a lot of people want to use the term arbitrary. But I guess they would be right on a technicality, which, as we all know, is the best kind of correct.
Always want to go for those technically correct. No, I think I'm learning. It definitely. I feel like I'm coming away with this. It definitely feels like if we're trying to erase the arbitrarity, if we're trying to say well, there are some relevant features for why good is the way that it is. And those things are grounded, like the way that reality could be to ground goodness can't contradict God's nature. It seems like to some degree God's nature is the grounding of reality as well. It's in the chain at least. And sorry, again, still trying to walk down the path. There's a lot going on here. Does that not then the thing I'm driving at is it does sort of feel like if you're not gonna go the God is identical to good simplicity route, it seems like the fact that goodness is grounded ontologically in God does have some questions, some problems for simplicity. I am not sure what the nature would be if it doesn't then have parts. Because otherwise, I think it fails to distinguish things from other things, which would allow there to be some good versus some bad.
Well, and this might also be where the privation theory comes in as well, because like for example,
I'm thinking higher order than privation.
Yeah. Well, but that's what I was getting at. Is like, if privation theory is correct, and if what you're talking about is correct, it could be the case that the consequence of these ideas is that goodness is just a label or a term that we use to describe something achieving its end, but but goodness does not have an ontological being within itself. It is a descriptor we use to describe things that have being, that have achieved their being. So that could be a natural consequence, and I don't necessarily see a quote-unquote issue with that, but I'll definitely need to look into that a little bit more, because if what we mean by good is just something that has being achieving its being, and what we mean by evil is something that has being that is removing itself from its being, then we're still achieving the privation theology without the issue of that you're trying to bring up, as far as like, what does it mean for goodness to have its ultimate grounding in God, but God himself not have goodness as a property?
Yeah, I think. Gosh, sorry. 1 second. My cat is
being
a shithead. Okay. Yeah. The nature of it all is where I'm kind of getting stuck, because I feel like you could construct a really solid secular deontology, I guess, around the idea of there is a way that things should be, and then if they achieve that being, then it's good, and otherwise if they fail to, it's lack of good. The fact that there are ways that things ought to be that could contradict God's nature makes me think there has to be some determiner high above the privation that determines which things are good and which things aren't, because it probably if it sounds like God would have to know what good is before things could exist to achieve that good, right? God would know that it is good for a tree to be that way before there were any, or even timelessly when there are no trees. Or I don't know. You don't hold to timelessness, do you?
I do. So
okay, yeah. So in the state of affairs without time, God would know what trees.
I misunderstood what you were saying. Then yes, sorry. I thought you were meaning God existing timelessly with the universe, in a sense, being eternal with Him. I misunderstood what you were saying then. Sorry, but.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm trying to just get around is if God knows good, things being grounded in God's nature seems to require God to seems to almost get you to divine command theory, and things not being grounded if God's nature does not necessarily map onto what is good, then it you get to either arbitrarity or secular morality.
Yeah.
In my read of it.
Yeah. So, and that's what I was saying is divine command theory, natural law theory is so divine command theory that is most often proposed, and it's kind of like when I say, oh yeah, Catholics denounce predestination. Well, technically we don't. What we denounce is what is often called double predestination, and we hold to what is often colloquially called single predestination. So as far as
Can't be predestined for the same crime twice.
but well, no, like double predestination is that God sends people to heaven and sends people to hell, and single predestination is just God sends people to heaven. And then
only carrot, no stick. Yeah.
Yeah, and so but regardless, so with divine command theory, the issue with when I say like the church rejects divine command theory, what I mean by that is the church rejects what is technically described as strong divine command theory, which is that divine command theory is that arbitrariness where God just decides arbitrarily. And we can't use logic and reason to come to that understanding. We can only know when God reveals it to us. Versus what natural law theory is, which is still under divine command theory, but it would be a weak divine command theory, so to speak, which is that it's still grounded and comes from God, and God is the source of it, but because it's not arbitrary, there are reasons that are quote-unquote binding his decrees to make sure that he isn't, contradicting, and he knows which ones will lead to the right goals. So that's what I was getting at earlier as well. It's like, could God have created a world where murder is not immoral? Kind of, because it would be a world where murder is impossible, period, like he did with the angels and demons. So they would have a different...
Like there could be a world where like murder is maybe, null because it doesn't happen. But like not one presumably where murder like is
able to happen and
good.
Yeah. So it's arbitrary in that sense, and that's what I was talking about before. But that's the weak divine command theory, where it's still like God being the source and grounding of it. But I do understand that your question is, well, if God isn't like doesn't have goodness in it, how can we say that he is good and be the grounding of goodness? I'm not sure that is a problem, because my comparison is like, if goodness is either one of two things. It either has its own ontology, like you and I do, or it is a description of things that have their own ontology. If it's the latter, I don't see any issue. I legitimately don't. I don't see any issue biting that bullet, so to speak. If it's the former, then just like how you and I have our grounding in God, yet what makes us be what we are isn't found in God, the same can be said of goodness if goodness has its own ontology.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I certainly don't believe that goodness has like ontology in the sense that it's a material thing. But like, I think maybe there should be a concern with the latter one, because to me, like, God knowing good will always sort of, bring around the question to me that it's like, what does he know? How does he know it? And that that does seem like it should be a problem if there is supposed to be one independent thing. This is actually, I guess, we are going under regress a little bit. Like, this seems like this is going back to last time we talked. I mentioned, like, what if there's multiple independent things? Like the number line could be considered independent and isn't God. Actually, no, that would be ontology. That would be a separate way to go about it. That's fair. I think I need to get going shortly for work, but I do want to chat about this more, and I think maybe next time we'll get into how do we learn what nature of something should be.
Appreciate you coming up.
Yeah, totally. Happy to chat every time. Thank you for letting me ramble.
Absolutely. And actually, that was good timing because we did just get a guest in the box. So, you have a good one.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. And then we've got Alonzo Miles Jr. Hey, Alonzo.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Are you at least over the age of 18?
Yes, sir.
All right. And what brings you up here today?
Yeah, I'm actually Christian. Having a fun
Hmm.
time in the comments, but I was interested about your idea of goodness and God.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think the way that y'all were talking about it, like maybe y'all were working towards something, but if you were to just like kind of just like re-explain that, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. So just to provide some history, Adrienne, she is not a believer, and but we're friends and we chat a little bit, and she's just kind of poking and prodding and trying to get to deeper understanding of my perspective on things. So it was less of us working together towards something and more of her just saying, "Hey, this is a question or a problem that I have with your worldview. Can you help me rectify it because you know your worldview much better than I do." Um, what practice or tradition of Christianity do you follow? Because that might help me a little bit as well.
I grew up Southern Baptist, and since
Mm-hmm.
then, kind of as much as I respect the Southern Baptist Church, and I think
Mm-hmm.
if I were to like usher an unbeliever into the faith, I would probably recommend the Southern Baptist Church. I think it's probably just the easiest to understand and get into. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say right now I'm more so non-denominational and
Okay.
but under the realm of Protestantism.
Yeah. Okay. So that in my experience, and I know that it's going to vary a lot depending on the particular Protestant or Christian that I'm speaking to in the Protestant traditions, but 99% of Protestants hold to what I was talking about of strong divine command theory, which is, God, you and I would both agree that genocide is immoral and we should never do it, right?
Right.
Then you get to passages in the Old Testament where God orders the genocide of the Amalekites. So then
Right. Yeah.
the divine command theorist would say, "Oh, it was good because God commanded it to be so." The natural law theorist is going to look for a different reason as to how those commands work within the same consistent laws that God had already given. Um, so that's the big difference between the two, essentially. Where the divine command theorist just says, "Yeah, well, because God said it, it's good." And
Well, yeah, I think and maybe assumably so agree with that statement, but I think I also am open to
mhm.
and kind of leaning towards like yeah, because God said it was. I think that's just like the easy way to like kind of get past certain things. But the more that we dig, I think it is good, and there's an explanation. Like you would say, maybe natural law theory.
So what I would get at is like with natural law theory, though, there's something called the principle of double effect, where it's actually not desired. Like the genocide was not desired, and other outcomes would have been preferable. But in order to achieve the outcome that was required, like as an example, let's say there is a mother who's pregnant, and then she discovers that she is about or she has cancer. Now the good news is they caught it early, and if she gets the cancer treatment, then her life will be saved. But the
Hmm.
radiations are going to be so intense for where the baby is at that it's going to cause the death of the child. But if she
Hmm.
waits until the child is born, then the cancer treatments aren't going to work, or at least have a lower likelihood of working, and the odds of her passing away are almost guaranteed.
Hmm.
So at that point, the question is, which route does she take? The principle of double effect says both are permissible. Because in the first one, the desire is to preserve her own life, which is a good, not the death of the child. Even though the outcome is going to result in the death of the child, she is permitted because preserving her own life is a good. Versus,
Right.
and then for the other one, sacrificing her life for her child is also a good.
Yeah.
But her losing her life at quote unquote not taking of her care of herself as she should is the undesired outcome. So that's where it gets into, is it could be the case that the genocides were the undesired effect of some other greater goal that God had in mind. So genocide is still evil, it's still atrocious, and it's still something we need to avoid. And then there's also interpretations. I was speaking with someone, like, for example, the Amalekites specifically. They never actually existed, and we actually know that to be a historical fact. But they were a literary device to describe the presence of evil within the faith community. And so all of those messages about removing and slaughtering the Amalekites was really a metaphorical, symbolic language to stress, hey, you need to eliminate and eradicate evil within your community, and using extreme graphic language to get to that point. So there's different ways to describe it, but divine command theory, like you said, just kind of takes the easy route of just like, yeah, no, God said it, so therefore it's okay. And that's where it gets into the arbitrariness of it, which I disagree that if we are made in the image and likeness of God and we are rational beings, and that means that God must be rational as well, or at least acts in a way that we can use our reasoning to understand, at least to some extent.
Yeah, more or less. I want to get back to that though, and I want to say, like, I completely agree with literally everything that you said. I think divine command theory is a simplified way of explaining natural law, though. I think I think it is a way of saying. I'm saying it can be. I'll say that.
Yeah, but it's the way that it's actually believed and practiced by many today. It's not. And if you want to look a little bit into the natural law theory, especially the way that I understand it, look up Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics.
Got you. And like, this is what I'm saying. I think this is kind of what we teach, like in our circle, is that whether we understand it or not, if God commands it, it is good, or at least it points to something good.
Yeah,
and so,
but the question then becomes: can we use our reasoning after God tells us to see why it is good? Divine command theorists, or at least strong ones, will say, no, we only know it because God said so. Whereas natural law theorists will say, no, we can use our reasoning to understand why God said it that way.
Yeah, I think both can be true. I think there are some things that we're still trying to figure out God why, and I think that there are a lot more things that we're like, oh, okay, now that maybe a year, 10 years, or generations have passed, that we can use our reason to say, okay, now I understand why he did what he did or ordered what he ordered.
No, absolutely. But like I said, look into it more. The fact that you're already showing interest in it actually makes me really excited. It's rare that I'll meet someone outside of the Catholic tradition that has an interest in these in natural law theory and things like that. But like I said, look into the Nicomachean Ethics. It was extremely foundational to a lot of early Christian writers on their understanding of morality, and is what laid the foundation and groundwork for Thomas Aquinas, who kind of quite literally wrote the book on natural law theory.
Yeah, and I think that that conversation around God and goodness, or I guess like God and good, it kind of like sparks that conversation a lot in our circles, because I think people now are just they think way more critically. And so like, I'm a younger Christian, and so when I teach, I'm teaching Christians even younger than I, and they are just very inquisitive, and they're saying, well, if God is this, then why this?
Yeah.
And one thing that we've kind of like the like simplest phrase that we're able to put is that put it into is that God does not merely do good things, but like
Mm-hmm.
he is good, like he is goodness.
Yeah.
And so um, in teaching that, I think what has happened is they've learned to separate what the world has told them is good from what God says is good, and then usually the answer comes to them in some way. They're like, okay, now that I have this understanding of God and this understanding of good,
Mm-hmm.
these things don't contradict anymore. And so like this is the whole like and I don't know what your position is on this and I won't assume, but this is the whole like love is love thing. And so it's like, oh, if we say God is love and the world says love is love, then there's a little bit of contradiction there if God says something isn't love that the world says is love. And so I guess that's really that the same thing happens with goodness, the same thing
Mm-hmm.
happens with
Well,
justice.
the same thing happens within science as well. For a long time, science said that um, the Earth was stationary, um, but it didn't mean that the Earth actually was stationary. It was in contradiction with with that. So just like if natural law theory is true, then that means that sure we might have a misunderstanding of it at some point, but eventually we can come to a right understanding, or at least closer to a right understanding. Whereas divine, especially strong divine command theory, um, God, the only way we can know things is if God tells us that what it is. So that contradiction is less of like an actual contradiction and more of a, hey, there is a limit in our understanding of what reality actually is.
Yeah, and I think that's where my mind was, and
Mm-hmm.
why I hit request because I think what happens is we meet a lot of people on like very extreme ends of things,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of like generalize in those. And I'm not saying that you're doing this. I know that you like kind of have to speak to it because you've encountered Protestants, especially. Well, and I when I encounter those people, I'm like, all right, bro, just like like one of the things that God gives us is experience. So like, let's go
Yeah.
get some. And so and that's what I'm saying. I think there's a large group of people like smack dead in the middle who can
Mm-hmm.
accept that both are complementary. And when you say something like, "Oh, I decided," of course I'm losing it now. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was when you were speaking about you were talking about like the Earth being stationary. Like what came right
Yeah.
after that? Like
Um, but that just because a lot of people thought that the Earth was stationary didn't mean that it actually was.
mhm.
And so just like
Oh
how
yeah.
we might think something is good, but it actually isn't, um,
Mhm.
that does not mean that there's a contradiction. It just means that our understanding was lacking.
Yeah, and I think like you're saying, like I think natural law theory says something like eventually for most things. I don't think that's true for all things, but I think it's true for
Mm-hmm.
most things. And so things like sexual deviance and fornication, like when you see communities of people growing up in single parent households and the rise in disease and the rise in teen pregnancies and the rise in abortions and things like that. I think it becomes very obvious, why certain things were said up front that may not have been obvious in the moment because it may have seemed like that God was restricting them from doing something that felt good. And so like that level of experience, I think, and observation, maybe even retroactively, like I think a lot of those things um, give us insight into God's nature and God's mind. And I think that's probably closer to what Romans 12:1 and 2 are really talking about, being transformed.
Hang on. Lizzie, did you come up to chat or did you have something to say for the conversation? I wasn't
I I just just had a question.
Yeah.
I heard the mention of like teen pregnancy and such. I'm also like half in and out of the conversation. I was doing the dishes. Can you repeat your point on that?
And just to let you know, Alonso, Lizzie is a friend of mine. She is not a Christian believer, but she is very knowledgeable on, women's suffrages, and especially like on and able to correct mischaracterizations that happen often in regards to things like the LGBTQIA topics and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was just saying that so fornication is something that is very much condemned in the Bible, and some see that as like I was having a conversation with a non-believer, and he said, "Why is that wrong?" And he was trying to understand, like what or why the Christian God may say this particular act is sinful, even, and when you zoom out and you look at the effects of it, and I mentioned teen pregnancy because my mother, she had 4 kids by 22. She had me at 17, and you can like zoom out and see the effect that it had on her life, and especially because my father wasn't there, my younger sibling's father wasn't there either, and that made at least her life much more difficult. And is also, affected ours to some degree as well.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree. So we're in a similar boat. My mother had 2 children before she was even 18. She had me later in life, so I got a bit of a better growing up than my brothers did. But yeah, growing up with your parents is really hard. However, I would like to know, my mother was Baptist when she had those 2 children. And the reason we have such high rates for teen pregnancy is because in religious communities, they don't teach proper sex education. So when people do inevitably go out and fornicate as whatever, because it's going to happen, right? We should at least be teaching them proper contraceptives to prevent things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I definitely hear that, and I think from your position, that is very wise to say. The reason that we speak about it differently, especially when we teach about
So there are a lot of states in the US where it's illegal to teach anything but abstinence. Mm-hmm. And we see in those states, they have the highest rates for teen pregnancies and abortions because of that.
And
you said it's illegal to teach anything about abstinence?
No, except
yeah, it's illegal to teach anything but abstinence. So I grew up in a red state in high school. My teacher was legally not allowed to tell me anything but to abstain. They weren't allowed to teach us about any birth control methods, no condoms, no pills, nothing. And because of that, we have higher rates of teen pregnancy.
And something that I would also add, something I'll also add that helps compound the problem is we're not teaching men responsibility. We're not teaching men what it means to be followers of Christ. And you mentioned about your mother, but I didn't hear any mention of your father, so I'm assuming he wasn't in the picture, or at least he wasn't in the picture for very long. But the thing is that whether he was or not, like, we see more single mother families because the man is taught that it's okay to not be responsible for his actions. And that, to me, is the bigger problem than the fornication, than the teen pregnancies or anything like that, because one, it takes 2 to tango. But all I can think of when I see stuff like this is the passage where the Pharisees brought the woman and they said, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. Well, if she was caught in the act, then that means that there had to have been someone that she was doing it with. Absolutely. But they only brought the woman. Where was and according to the law, if they were caught in the act, especially if it was in the city, both were to be punished. So the fact that
Yeah.
only she was brought forth means that they weren't actually following the law. Where was the man? Where was the responsibility being held to that man as well? But it's only the
Yeah,
women
no,
that are
I'm
being
not.
held responsible for it. And I think that's the bigger issue, is less of the fornication aspect of things, but where are the men being taught responsibility?
Absolutely, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. Especially the church that I attend, we have very frequent men's meetings and conferences where
Mm-hmm.
we're saying, "Hey, look, the buck stops with you, bud. If you make certain decisions, like you are to take uh, take dominion over the situation and say like, you know what, I messed up, and so it's up to me to make my next decision my best decision,
Mm-hmm.
biblically, of course. The reason I didn't mention my father is because absolutely, yeah, the first two. My mother had my older sister at 16 and me at 17. He passed away 2 months before I was born,
I'm
and
sorry to hear
so
that.
obviously, yeah, yeah, I never met him, so that's whatever. But of course, they were like in the act of fornication before,
Mm-hmm.
and the only one, and this is unfortunate for her as well, the only one who got like ridiculed for it really was her, because I mean, literally, she was the only one alive,
Yeah.
and so when she not so even when I speak to her about it, because it's still a very very sensitive topic for her 24 years later,
Absolutely. Like, that's
which
always
makes
going to
sense.
be.
Yeah, what we talk about is usually his responsibility, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Bible says he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor in the Lord. Like that is very obvious. Like, we're the ones who are supposed to be like ready in those situations. Like, we're the ones who are supposed to be like, you know what? When I see a woman, I'm going to honor her. Ephesians 5, love her as Christ loves the church. That means with honor, respect. I forget who it is later in the New Testament that says treat her with understanding and all of those things. I 1,000% agree. Like, it is men's responsibility to treat women in a way that would be um, pleasing to God. And as a result, we got men dishonoring women and disrespecting their bodies. And this is where SA culture has
Mm-hmm.
risen. This is where things like teen pregnancy have risen. This is where things like domestic violence have risen. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
Bible is very much against all of those things and
Yeah.
discipling young men. And I'm grateful because I was able to get this at the church that I grew up in, discipling young men to respect the woman and her body and her being as an equal, maybe not an equivalent in the sense that we have the exact same function, but as
Mm-hmm.
an equal. That I've made better decisions because of that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, fornication is a sin, as the Bible would say. But I think agree, when Adam and Eve sinned, God waited until Adam also sinned and then addressed him first when
Well,
it happened, even
if
though
you
she might
look
have
at
taken the first bite.
if you look at the text itself, Adam bore full responsibility. Period.
Absolutely,
Because
yeah.
it even says, and Eve gave some of the fruit of the tree to her husband who was with her. And
Hmm.
I know people talk about, oh, it was a snake, and there's different ways that Hebrew word that we translate as serpent can be translated as. But a common interpretation of it is this was a masculine figure, whether it was like a dragon-like figure, a snake with legs, or a more humanoid in appearance. Like, it's irrelevant, but the fact of the matter is that a male figure was talking to a woman in front of her husband, when in that culture it is the responsibility of the man to speak to another man on behalf of his wife. Whether that's culturally right or wrong is a different conversation, but that was the culture. It was his responsibility to make sure that he was handling that danger. But instead of standing in, quote unquote, standing in front of his wife to make sure she was safe, he was hiding behind his wife and letting her take the danger. So that's why God spoke to
Absolutely,
Adam first, because it was his responsibility within the text.
absolutely.
But yeah, I
So the
saw
frog girl, I
some.
don't know if I really hit it, but that was the piece about fornication I was getting at there. Well, they did say they were doing dishes, so that's
Yeah, but I did see
You can call me
someone.
Lizzie. Sorry, I updated my profile and TikTok is dumb, so it makes me change my screen name with my username, but it'll be back to what it's supposed to be in like 3 days when I can fix it.
Nice.
okay. And so, what'd you say to refer to you as? Sorry,
Lizzie?
Lizzie. Okay.
But yeah, I saw someone jump in and then jump back out in the guest request box. But I currently don't have anyone in. If anyone wants to join to talk about whether or not the belief in God is rational, feel free to jump in and we'll have a conversation on that. Um, but do you have anything else you wanted to share, Alonso, while we wait for the next guest? Or
Yeah, I just wanted to first make sure that I actually address what Lizzie said originally, because I think I responded more so to what you said about the man's responsibility. I don't know if I hit Lizzie's point.
No, you're
uh,
fine. I just wanted to hear what you said about teen pregnancy. That just piqued
Oh,
my
okay.
interest.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She's so used to people being bad faith about teen pregnancy that it just got on her radar, and she just wanted to make sure that you were being genuine and considerate.
Oh yeah. Look, yeah. I understand. Like I guess we all experience some sort of church hurt, or like heard just like the super hypocritical Christians out there, and I put quotes around Christians. Of course, you can't see me, but um, yeah, I 1,000% agree. I think it could be like almost liberal of me to say like that. I think most of this stuff is at the hands of men. Um, God oftentimes looks at the man and says, hey, look, bro, like this was on you,
Hmm.
and it's up to you now to also fix it. And I think Jesus' ministry really shows us also how he views women, and that he upholds them, and that he sees them as daughters, and not just like some subordinate being that's just like under men. Like, no, it's not all men are over all women. The only structure that we have that with is the household, and even still, they are to take dominion together. They are equals. It's just really a matter of communication. And so I 1,000% agree with everything there.
Yep. I think I'm gonna give it 2, maybe 3 more minutes. If we don't get another guest, I might just call it early. Um, but but yeah, it was a pleasure talking with you, Alonzo. Like I said, I'm gonna give it another few minutes before I call it, unless someone decides to join in. Um, but I wish you luck on your journey, and you enjoy the rest of your day. All right.
Absolutely, brother. You as well. God bless you.
God bless. But but yeah, for those that are in the chat, like if anyone wants to come on up, currently I've got no one in the guest request box. Paichi, I do think atheism can also be rational. As I mentioned earlier, the a belief is just your position to a proposition, whether you accept it or reject it, and your reasons for accepting or rejecting that proposition can be rational or irrational. So absolutely, atheism can also be rational. But yeah, for those that would like to come up to have a conversation, the guest request box is currently open. I've also got a Discord community. Lizzie is actually in there as well and helps run it. You actually can thank her for it looking as nice as it is. And the and if you want it, you can either send me a DM and I can get the Discord link over to you, as well as there's a link tree in my TikTok bio that's got a link to the Discord, my YouTube as well. Yes, Paichi, rationality is like if something is valid, I would consider it someone being rational. If something is invalid or the premises are obviously false, then I would say they're being irrational. But let's see. I don't see, Lizzie, I don't see the, I did see that you got some roses from Holigor.
I know, I feel so loved. Thank you.
Yeah, he didn't send me any roses. He just sent me the heart me.
It's because I'm prettier.
Yes. Yeah, I think I'll just go ahead and call it for today. Don't have anyone else in the guest request box. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and you know, I will be live again Monday, or should be. I don't foresee anything that would prevent me from going live currently. And I don't know, I'm debating on doing different topics, but I'm trying to figure out ones that I can have that would be in good conversation. So if anyone's got ideas, I'd be more than happy to hear them. But yeah, everyone enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your weekend.